Welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast, episode 58. My name is Alina Warwick, and today we have Veena Somareddy on the show. But before we continue with this episode, I wanted to ask if you can share some love by subscribing to the podcast and leaving a rating. If you leave a rating, your name may be dropped in one of my future episodes. So stay tuned and connected.
If you choose the US, it doesn't mean the US will choose you. You might not get a visa. And before I actually received my student visa, I was rejected thrice for a tourist visa.
3 times?
Yeah, for a tourist visa. It was not even for immigrating to the US. It just depends on who's interviewing you that day, and they don't feel like giving you a visa, you don't get it.
Veena immigrated from India when she was 22 years old, all by herself, to study game design and development at the University of Texas at Dallas. After graduating with a master's degree, she went into a PhD program to further pursue higher education. But life took her by surprise and unexpectedly. A random act by a stranger led her to be the co-founder at Neuro Rehab VR at the age of 27. Veena and her co-founder focus on virtual reality healthcare aimed at building virtual and augmented reality therapy exercises for patients with neurological disorders. She's been recognized as a top innovator in North Texas, Fast Company's World Changing Ideas honoree. She's also a digital leader finalist in Booking.com's Technology Playmaker Awards, and she's been featured in Forbes. Using her many years of research and development experience in virtual reality and augmented reality, she is helping to connect technology and healthcare to greatly enhance patient care and rehabilitation outcomes. So let's dive right in and hear all about this young immigrant entrepreneur's journey. Veena, thank you so much for coming on the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast. I really appreciate your time and I'm super excited to hear all about your journey. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and I love what you're doing. So it feels amazing to be part of it.
So, let's talk about your immigrant journey. Tell us where you're from and when did you come to the United States?
Sure. I'm from South India, Bangalore. I came to the US when I was 22 years old to work on my master's.
Okay, so tell me, what was that journey like at 22 years old? Did you come by yourself?
Yes, just like a lot of immigrants who come here to the States to do their master's, I was on my own. It is very scary, but what keeps you going is, you have friends, you have others who are coming along with you. So I kind of have a support group that you can work with when everybody else is in the same boat as you are. You kind of are, well, like maybe I can do this if somebody else can. So, but it's still very scary leaving your parents, leaving your family, and they're 10,000 miles away.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to find new family, friends in a brand new country, in a completely unknown country.
Exactly. And when you have no family here at all.
Okay, so you came to study. What school did you go to?
I went to University of Texas at Dallas here in Texas, and my major was I was doing my master's in game design and development.
Did you live on campus? How did you get transitioned? Did your parents come with you when you initially got signed up for school to drop you off, or you just came all by yourself?
I wish my parents could come with me. I wish that was a thing, or siblings, but you know how visas work. Only you get to go once you receive the visa to go to the States. I was on my own and yeah, didn't really have any family here. But when I did land here, we had a family friend that was able to pick me up from the airport that my father knew about for a while. So that was all right. But I don't think I saw them after they helped me out the first couple days, which was amazing. But when I did get to the campus, we had to find some place to stay. I had tried to figure all of that out before I came to the US from India. So I did find a temporary stay. I stayed with them. for a little bit and then had to find a lease and things like that and figure out how renting and leasing and all of that works in the US. So I was on campus in the beginning, basically figure out how to be an adult. Yeah.
What did you say? You said you were 22 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so we'll get back to that transition. I want to know, what was it like growing up in South India?
I am from Bangalore, so I would say it was pretty normal. Bangalore is an IT city. There's a lot of software developers and engineers, and there are software companies. So growing around that, I always knew that I would be working in some form of technology or pursue a career in technology. So that was huge in Bangalore. But other than that, I think I had a pretty normal childhood. My parents were well enough to be able to send me to school, or and I went to undergrad, did my computer science in India, and always wanted to do more. There is a lot of opportunities in this particular city in India, but I knew that I could do more. And that's one of the reasons I always wanted to come to the US.
Okay. And why did you choose US versus any other country?
Well, the sky is the limit here.
Yes.
Yes, that is one of the reasons. I had other places as my backup too, because it's if you choose the US, it doesn't mean the US will choose you. You might not get a visa. And before I actually received my student visa, I was rejected thrice for a tourist visa.
3 times?
Yeah, for a tourist visa. It was not even for immigrating to the US. It just depends on who's interviewing you that day, and they don't feel like giving you a visa, you don't get it. That's kind of what I went through. So I was pretty dejected. And when I did apply for my student visa, we almost thought I won't get it. So I had applied for colleges in Canada and the UK just as a backup
Mm.
anyway, but I wasn't sure if I would actually go if I didn't get my visa to the US.
Got it. Okay. And growing up, did you always know that you were going to land in United States, or did you kind of just know it was somewhere outside of India?
I'm not sure, not really. I think it was more when I finished my undergrad and my brother had immigrated previously and he had completed his master's and was working in the US. And I knew from how his growth and trajectory, I had seen him go from, software developers and then came back to do his MBA. I'd seen him grow and I was like, I wanted the same. Since he had an opportunity to go for me, I was like, that would probably be what I would do too. But then there are some things you'll have to deal with when you're from India and you're in a society where they don't really sometimes see girls going to the US or working on their career that much. So it was a bit of struggle, but it did take me a little bit more of convincing. Then it was easier for my brother. In my brother's case, my parents pushed him to actually go to the US. He was not interested in
Ah.
coming to the US. And for me, it was the other way around. I was like, I am going to go, whatever happens. They were pretty neutral about it in the beginning, but I think my dad has always given me and my brother the same opportunities.
Hmm.
When considering that, I had to tell him, like, you let my brother go and you have to let me go too.
Aw.
I think my career would be probably in India, probably in a different trajectory than what's happening right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, tell me a little bit about the struggles that you had to go through when you first immigrated. And I want to know, what were you feeling at 22 years old, all by yourself in a brand new country?
There's so many feelings that you go through. You're scared and you're also excited at the same time. But I think the feeling that you have, for at least for the first year, is you feel like you're floating through things. You don't have a ground to stand on. Something that I always felt, because one of the things that a lot of Indians do come to the US for is computer science, and I chose game design and development as my major. And I was the only Indian in my whole course for that. The year that I was in there, there was one other person who had finished, who was like in the second year of her master's. So I had one person to talk to that had a similar experience as me, and everybody else were Americans from here, and they seemed pretty comfortable. They didn't have to come to a different country. So it was a lot of getting used to and getting assimilated in the beginning. And I had a lot of doubts, like, did I make a mistake? Everybody is going to computer science or at their MBAs, and I'm the only person who is in ATech, and I must be pretty stupid.
Yeah.
to be doing this a major that nobody else has chosen. But I was always interested in emerging technology. I wanted to go into creating gaming and development. And so I stuck to it. I was like, this is what I want to do. I like what I'm doing, and I'm going to see where this will take me. So that was kind of a struggle in the beginning, being the only Indian in the course and not having any friends around you. And the first time you come to the country, there is so much you have to learn before you assimilate and you understand the American culture and what's going on. So I'm sure I did a lot of mistakes where people couldn't really understand what I was trying to say because even if it's the same language, it's different. English that we speak in India is different from English that Americans
Right.
speak in a way. So those are things that I had to navigate in the first year, at least.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're totally right. There's a lot of people on the show that say, "Well, we learn English in Europe, but it's completely different. The dialect is different." And some people learn English, like you're saying, it's not like the right dialect or the right conversational English. So, but hey, your English is really good. So, good job.
We did have English as growing up, so it's not something that I learned when I came to the US. So I was
Yeah.
lucky that way. But it's things like in here, a hamburger is something that's made of a burger, but in India, a hamburger is anything that's in a bun. It,
Oh, got
so
it.
yeah, so I used to go and ask for a hamburger, but I don't eat beef. So I was like, can you remove the beef after the hamburger? And you had to see the face of the waitress. She was so
Oh,
confused. And it took
oh.
me, I don't know, about a few months to understand what I was doing wrong.
I love it. Oh my goodness. What an amazing story. Fabulous. So, when you said you were the only Indian in your classes, were you also the only female in your classes? Because I feel like that is more male dominated, or no, there were other female in your classes.
Yeah, fortunately, there were other women in
Okay.
my classes, but it also was a combination of game design development and, graphic design, animation. So it was a combination of all of that. So there were women, but the gaming piece was kind of dominated by men, but I did see women in that too. So that way it wasn't too bad,
Hmm.
even though there were more men than women, as you see in most STEM degrees. But
Yes.
I was not the only woman in the class, so that was good.
Yeah, that's good. So, Veena, before you tell our listeners about your company, tell me a little bit more about the path you took. And let's pick up right after school. So, right after you finished your master's degree, where did you go?
So, as the usual path is laid out for almost everybody from India, you go to school, you get a job, and you work in your job, and that is the pathway that you kind of have to follow, and everybody does. And that's exactly what I thought I would do, but I still had this nagging feeling behind me that I wanted to work for a startup because I wanted to create my own startup at some point. So after my master's, I actually got a job in a startup in Florida, and I started to work there, but I had to, because of some visa issues, I had to go back to school. And then I chose I could either do an MBA or I could do my PhD. So I chose to do a PhD in the same area, which is virtual reality and medical simulation. And that was my pathway. But while I was working, even when I was back in school, I was always learning the new technologies that was coming out in VR and AR and trying to learn as much as I can and create prototypes.
Okay, so you worked at the startup for how long?
It was for a year.
1 year. Okay. And then after that, what did you decide to do?
I came back to UT Dallas to work on my PhD.
Okay. So, did you finish your PhD program?
I did not know. I
Ah,
am one of those
okay.
people, yeah, who dropped out.
Okay, so what happened there?
So what happened there was I had finished all my courses. Around that time is when I met my co-founder,
Okay.
who that I'm working with right now, and he had a clinic, a neurological recovery clinic that sees patients who've had stroke or brain injury, spinal cord injuries, and his son had an anoxic brain injury about 5 years ago now, and that's why he started the clinic so that for his son. And it's an amazing story because they wanted this particular gait training robot that he wanted his son to use, but they would not let them use it, buy one for his home. So the only way to use it was to create a clinic, and that he ended up actually opening a clinic just for one patient, which was his son in the beginning, and now we have many more. And he found my resume online. I was not even looking for jobs at that point, I think. And he reached out and I was like, this is great. I would just like to come check out what you're doing and figure it out. Because even though I was in game design and development, I was always interested in healthcare.
Hmm.
I've done a few internships while I was in my PhD and my master's, and I was trying to always push for creating simulations and training in VR and trying to be in the medical space. So I was like, this is great, let's meet. And I met him, and then we kind of, started working with patients and the therapist there and created this company. So that was back in 2017. I was still working on my PhD. I was also working on the company, and I was a teaching assistant at the same time. And the place I lived and where the school was and where the clinic was each of them were 50 miles from each other in a triangle. So I felt like I spent my year in my car just
Yeah.
driving from one place to the other, and I was burnt out by the end of it. And I was like, I need to leave something. So and that's how I kind of dropped out of my PhD.
Okay. And so initially, when your co founder reached out to you and he found your resume online, what did he propose to you?
He just said he has a clinic and he's thinking of adding virtual reality to the clinic because he was all just trying to find anything that would help his son. So we had a lot of robotic devices, virtual reality. Now we have hyperbarics and transcranial magnetic stimulation, everything and anything that would help. And he had read a lot about virtual reality being helpful for anybody who has a stroke or a brain injury to bring them back to help them with their recovery. I loved that piece because my whole thing was I whatever I'm creating, I want to be trying to help people. In when you're in academia, we worked on a lot of projects, but in the end, those projects didn't really go out to the world.
Right.
And that was something I felt like was always missing. I was like, I'm creating a lot of good things here. We're writing papers, but we're not helping anybody with the products yet.
Hmm.
So that's what drew me to it was a random message and I could have just totally ignored it. And I almost did. And I kept going back to it just because he said, it's a medical clinic and he's looking to add VR, like let's me just meet you and see what this is about. And I'm glad I did.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That was really spontaneous.
Yes.
And yeah, that's very such a unique story. So when he had the clinic, was it called Neuro Rehab VR?
No, the clinic is still around. It's called Neurological Recovery Center.
Okay.
And we created the company, which is Neuro Rehab VR, once we started to work together. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So you quit your PhD program to launch Neuro Rehab VR with your co-founder.
Yes.
Okay. And so tell me a little bit about that transition. What did you guys do in the beginning stages? Where did you guys go? Where did you start off from? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, in 2017, while I was still, working on my PhD, I started to create prototypes for the patients there in the clinic and the therapist with a lot of feedback from the therapist. So the therapist used to try it out, and then a couple of patients would and give us feedback. That's kind of how we started, and we saw that it was making a difference. Right.
Hmm.
So and that's when I was like, there is something to this, and I want to do this full time. And that's pretty much where like we created the company. I quit my PhD, and I was just me. And then in 2017, it was just me and a few advisors. And 2018 is when we actually had our second employee.
So, did you have any income coming through? I know you mentioned you had some internships, but when you quit your PhD, are you disqualified from the internships? Did you have any side job at all?
Fortunately, my co-founder is also the investor in the company. So I was getting paid from the beginning, even though it was not much.
Okay.
It's still a salary. So I was getting a salary from the beginning. So I was very fortunate to be able to do that because if you are in the US and you are not, either you're studying or you actually do not have a job, you can't actually stay here.
Right. And
Mhm.
so, what did you do with your visa requirements?
Oh yeah, I was able to apply for a work visa,
Which one?
H-1B. Mhm.
H-1B. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
My previous company actually had applied, the company that I worked for in Tampa applied for my visa and I was able to transfer it to the new company.
Wow, awesome. It kind of seems like it all kind of just like worked out for you in the end with, going to Tampa and then getting a spontaneous message from this random
Mhm.
person and now being a co-founder. So tell me more about your company and what you guys do at Neuro Rehab VR.
Sure. What we do is we develop virtual reality therapy exercises for physical therapy and cognitive training, mostly for patients who've had, suffered a stroke or a brain injury or a spinal cord injury or neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's, MS. What we are trying to do is trying to help them recover from the incident that they've had. Most of these patients go to physical therapy because they will after their incident, they're not able to, either paralyzed on one side. With Parkinson's, they have tremors. They're trying to be able to do everyday living things like being independent, going to the grocery store, and things like that. And while they're in their physical therapy, we are trying to make it more fun and engaging and motivating for them with our virtual reality applications. So we create these fun, complex VR scenarios. We can create everyday living scenarios, or also we can make it into some gamify it. So they have scores. They also have, music. They have haptic feedback. They have all the visual feedback too. So now when they're in their therapy, it doesn't actually feel like therapy, but they're having fun, but still working on their functional goals.
Yeah, that's amazing. You guys are definitely changing the world of physical therapy. And I'm reading on your website, you guys are including patients with traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, strokes, multiple sclerosis, others. So I wanted to ask, do you guys have any patents on your devices?
We do, yes. We have applied for patents and we have won a couple.
Wow, that's amazing. I feel like physical therapy and the medical industry has gone through so many different waves, but virtual reality is something completely brings it up to the scale like a huge notch. What are your clients' experiences and what are they feeling of effectiveness and how they're being proactive with their physical therapy and what are you hearing from them?
Yeah, it is so much fun and also enjoyable to see somebody try VR and get really immersed in it. And as soon as they put on the headset, they're in this totally different world, which is not drab and dreary like most physical therapy clinics. This pretty environment which is engaging. You could be on a beach or you could be in a mountain town, but working on your physical therapy. So once they put on a headset, I see them smile, they're happier, and they kind of forget the inhibitions that they have and the limitations that they have from
Yeah.
from the injury that have been through or the incident. And it's also a mental barrier because they know what their limitations are, and when they they're trying to do something like extend their hand or move away from their midline, they kind of stop themselves. But in this virtual world, they kind of do not have the reference point of their body. Maybe their hands look like avatars, it could be swords, it could be anything in the virtual world. So now they're able to do more, they're having more fun, and they're very, very engaged in the therapy because physical therapy can be tedious and boring sometimes because you're doing repetitions of the same movement many, many times. That's one way to, bring back those neural pathways that you have lost when if you
Mhm.
had a stroke. But now you're working on those repetitions, but in a fun, gamified environment.
Oh, yeah. So cool. I love it. And do you guys work with hospitals to get these headsets to these different clinics, or do you guys just have that one clinic and you guys have patients come through your specific clinic?
We are definitely a software company, and that's how we look at ourselves. So we sell our systems to hospitals and clinics, senior care centers, and also universities.
Okay, so what about the headsets? Do you guys sell the headsets as well?
Yeah, so we do not manufacture the headset. We use off the shelf hardware,
Okay.
but as a solution, we package both the hardware and the software, and everything that our client needs is part of the solution.
Okay, so you guys don't use that clinic that your co-founder had at all for this.
Yeah, so we are actually housed inside the clinic.
Okay.
And it was definitely a big part of as we were creating these applications because most of the ideas were, when I'm talking to patients and I'm asking them, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And that's how the ideas came about. And also sometimes just watching the therapists work with their patients, we had ideas about how we can make that better, how we can make that more engaging and fun for the patient. So the clinic has been a big part of actually building our solution.
Okay, it probably gives you that leverage of showcasing what your different types of software can do to the different physical therapy activities, right?
Exactly. One, games, arts or therapy exercises and games are hard to build, but then it's even harder, difficult to build for somebody who's like disabled or has some kind of disability. Because when I built my first application, I built it thinking, keeping in mind a healthy body person like me. So it worked for me, but when I tried on a
Hmm.
patient, it did not. And being around these patients who've had these range of abilities and functional levels has been amazing for us so that we were able to create something that everybody can use. We are able to add all of those features into our application so that somebody who's had very low function or a stroke can use it, and somebody who's maybe an athlete and can also use it.
What an amazing product. I love it.
Thank you.
So, Veena, how old were you when you started your business?
I was 27 years old when I started the business in 2017. Yeah, it's helpful.
So, did you guys need to raise capital? I know you mentioned that your co founder is an investor, but what was the raising capital like for you guys?
Right. So we've just been fortunate enough that our co founder has been able to fund the company. And we also received a National Science Foundation grant that has been amazing for us. And as a person, I've always been frugal with money, and I've used the same concepts here in the company too. So we've been able to do a lot with a lot less money. And when you have access to only a certain amount, you just try to figure out how to reach your goals with that much. And that's what we've been doing till now, and we've been able to achieve a lot. But now we're actually raising around or thinking about raising.
Oh, okay, your first round. And how long did it take you guys to see some real traction in the beginning stages?
So, healthcare is a difficult industry, and it's not only the software and the technology and everything that you figure out, it also the regulations around medical technology like this. So, we had to figure out if we have to go through FDA and things like that because virtual reality was so new, and there were some companies that were going through an FDA process and others weren't. But we decided that we would like to do that and go through the FDA process. So that we completed that in 2019 and we were able to bring the product to market. That was the first very big hurdle that we had to get through before even we could get into the market. And 2019, I think the second half of 2019 is when we started to see real traction, things taking off.
So, pretty fast after you launched the product, right?
Mhm.
So, a couple of months. Okay, yeah.
I think in 2017, 2018, virtual reality was still new.
Okay.
And I think we spent a lot of time educating people as to what it was and how they can actually use it. So you can see a lot of educational content on our website. And it was like that's one of the things that we felt like it's our job to educate people on how they can implement this in their clinic. It's not just giving you the product.
Hmm.
So that was a big part of it. And now that's paying off really well because when somebody is searching for how to use virtual reality in a clinical setting, our website will mostly come up and videos and the research papers and the case studies we have out there. And that's why we have had more and more people come to our website. Since then, it's exponentially grown. And I'm glad we put that work in the beginning.
So, what about marketing? Because I'm thinking that Facebook marketing and Instagram ads is probably not going to work for you guys. How do you guys market to hospitals and clinics? What is that process like?
We've been fortunate enough that most of the sales that we've gotten is through our website, is people coming to our website and asking us about a product and just chatting with me on the chat box, and then goes through the sales funnel.
Wow.
Other than that, yeah, it still amazes me. We didn't really have like a dedicated sales team. And we're just starting to, hire more people for our sales arsenal right now.
So, no advertising or marketing. It's strictly been like SEO by producing these educational content, educational material about your product, about virtual reality, and the physical therapy piece.
Yes. So making sure the SEO is really good on our website. We have content out on all four platforms like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter that goes out infrequently and writing blog posts consistently. So putting a lot of content out there. I only tried LinkedIn ads just a couple months ago. I was like, let me try this out because
Yeah.
we haven't, last year we didn't spend money. We do go to trade shows. That's one thing that we did spend money on because when you go to physical therapy trade shows, you're able to meet physical therapists, then they can try the product. That's the best part. So when some physical therapists or occupational therapists puts on the headset and tries the product, it just clicks for them how they can use it with their patient and how they can make their therapy plan much more fun and engaging for the patient. So it's amazing to see that. Trade shows is the only one that we've actually spent money on. Other than that, it's a lot of content. I only tried LinkedIn ads a couple months ago to see what will come out of it, and we're just still A/B testing that process.
Wow, that is actually fabulous for you guys because you're so niched down in such a very probably smaller market. And that way, anyone Googling anything related to your company, the very first thing that pops up is probably your company. So your SEO is probably top notch and good job. Keep that up.
And it was also a learning process because in the beginning, you're trying to understand the industry because I am not a physical therapist. So that was a learning curve for me. And I ended up going to a few trade shows which were related to virtual reality and augmented reality because that's the technology space I was in.
Yeah.
Took me a couple months, few months to realize that is not helpful because my target demographic is actually not there in these conferences. There are
Oh.
startups, there are investors maybe, and there are consumers, but not physical therapists and my target demographic. So we kind of stopped going to technology conferences, even though I love those. I get to see all the new technology that's out there and what's coming out next. They're my favorite. But we had to stop and we started to go to physical therapy conferences, occupational therapy conferences.
So you had to tweak it and go to different
Mhm.
conferences because your customers and your clientele was not there. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
And most of the time, we were with the most advanced technological company there in those conferences. So it drew a lot of attention, which is good.
Yeah, good job. Did you have any mentors that helped you out to start your business?
Definitely, I lean on my mentors a lot. And I've had really good ones and not so great ones. As you work with people, you start to understand who's really there for you and who really wants you to succeed. And you kind of know. And then they become a big part of the business too. So whenever I have any questions about strategy, what to do next, what's the best pathway for the company, I always lean on a few mentors I have. They're also a couple of them are also part of my board members team. So they've been a big part. I like learning from people and asking questions because I don't shy away from I know everything. I always go and saying I'm still figuring this out, so help me out.
Mhm.
And I try to learn from other founders and also mentors, mostly who have already had their own startups and exited a startup. They've been through the whole life cycle of what I'm going through right now. And it's amazing to understand what they went through. And then you start to see the parallel tracks. You see everything that they've been to. You are in kind of that stage of where they were
Mhm.
at some point in
Mhm.
their startup. And so they're able to actually give you real world advice. That is a big part of mentors have been a big part of what the company.
Yeah. And where did you find these mentors?
Various ways. So in the beginning, we were doing a lot of pitches, startup pitches, and then I won a couple of them. So through that, they all conferences, they've reached out to me, and then we just started to talk, and it's mostly been just networking events.
Mm.
And also UT Dallas has been big. The entrepreneurship center in UT Dallas is really, really good, and they have amazing mentors. And these mentors have other mentor networks, and they say, you should probably talk to this person because he's an expert in VR or healthcare, and that's how you mostly meet them.
Which one in Dallas?
University of Texas at
Oh.
Dallas
Oh,
has
okay.
an entrepreneurship course and also the Blackstone Launchpad where they help student entrepreneurs.
Got it.
And I did lean on them a lot when I was still working on my PhD and had the idea for this company. Wanted to start this company.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love the way that you say that, we don't know everything, so we got to rely on different people and ask for questions because a lot of times immigrants want to figure this out all by themselves and it takes us a little bit longer than expected. Whereas like my dad, he never had mentors at all. He just started off all by himself, figuring it out all by himself. And, the very first year in business, he made $0. And the second year, he made $3,000. But I think it's more of like an immigrant mentality that we got to figure this out all by ourselves and we got to go out there and hustle and just, struggle our way through. But, you're just shown proof that we don't have to do this all by ourselves. And I see that all the time. And I think one of the ladies I had on my show, she really built her business through networking. That's like all she did was through networking and getting referrals. And it was a different type of business, but it worked out for her. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And it's so powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing for her.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I like about having mentors is, they bring different perspectives. Sometimes you're working on your day-to-day activities in your company, your heads down, and you don't have the time to think about the vision sometimes, and you need somebody to push you, saying, you're doing this wrong, you're doing the same thing over and again, it may be not giving you results. Think about this different perspective. Think about where you want to take your company. And the mistake we do as maybe women and maybe immigrants is we know we can do a lot, but we still set our expectations too low and how what we can achieve.
Hmm.
So you need somebody else from the outside saying you can do more than this. Your company could be bigger than this. And I needed that probably was from my mentors too.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. We can all do so much more. And I hear it all the time, the limited beliefs that we have that we create, women or immigrants. I'm not sure which one it is, but in any case, you're totally right. You're totally right. And growing and these mentors that push us to grow is how we propel our businesses to the next level. So, yeah, absolutely.
You put that really, yeah, that's eloquently
Yeah.
put exactly what I was trying to say.
Awesome. No,
Yeah.
you did it all. Awesome. Okay, so Veena, I'm interested. How do you stay productive throughout the days to ensure that all businesses things are getting taken care of?
Oh my God. Yeah, it is a struggle every day. I wouldn't say I'm perfect at it, but I wake up and create a list of things that I'll have to finish today. And having that list is very helpful because when you're working on a company, you're working on the product, you're working on the sales side, you're working on things that you have to do for marketing, answering emails, working with current customers, making sure everything is going fine. It's a lot of things at once.
Mhm.
And for me, obviously use tools, but I feel writing down has helped me even more. So I have notes everywhere. I have one journal that I have where I write down anything that comes to my mind that I have to do. I put in a list and then pick out things out of that list that I would prioritize for that one day and try to and finish everything for the day. That's one thing that I really like to do. And also even for delegating to your employees, because it's not just everything that you do, it's also making sure that everybody, your team members, are also being productive and making sure we are hitting all our goals. So there's a lot of planning that goes into that. And when we are planning, we try to plan things out, especially on the product side, what we're going to build for the next 2 weeks. But even before that, I kind of plan out everything for the month, everything that we would build, and have set goals like this month, this is the big goal that we're going to complete, launch a product or create a revenue stream or things like that. And then figure out everything that I need, the resources, the people, the expertise sometimes. And that's when I go back to mentorship, find people that are experts in that area so that I don't have to do all the learning. I can learn from somebody who already knows the subject. So that's one of the things, creating a plan, making lists, writing down everything that I need to do. Otherwise, my brain is usually just filled up with hundreds of tasks that needs to get done in a day.
Absolutely love the strategies that you have created. And it seems like you have a very good system developed. You have your to do list, you have your tasks that are, that you have set goals for, realistic goals. And if you can't reach them, you tap into your networks. And that is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. And one more tool that has really helped is the Pomodoro timer, if you've heard about it.
No. Mm-mm.
The Pomodoro timer is where it's called different things, where you do work for 25 minutes without getting distracted and then take a 5-minute break. It's called the Pomodoro because it's the person who invented it used a tomato as a tomato timer, the ones that you usually use for cooking.
Okay. Yeah.
And he used that to set a timer where for those 25 minutes, you only focus on that one task. And I feel I get so much done in those 25 minutes than when you're no Slack messages, no phone, nothing else, just that one task that I have to finish. Usually, something big of creating an application or something like that. And then you take a 5-minute break. And doing that, I have seen myself go into flow states more than not having that timer.
And is that an app?
Yeah, you can just look for Pomodoro
Pomodoro. Okay.
timer. You can find a web app. I use a phone app so I can keep track of how many 25-minute segments that I was able to do in a day. You really can't do more than 5 to 6. if you reach 5 to 6 in a day with focused work, it's actually good.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll find it and I'll link it in our show notes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the guy or the gal who created Pomodoro is Russian because pomidor is tomato in Russian.
Yeah, it's probably from Russia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you said pomodoro, I'm like, pomidor, tomato, hey.
Nice. And I think it works really well because our brains are so used to scrolling and getting notifications and getting distracted these days. When I have the 25-minute timer on, whatever anything Slack notifications or other notification that I get, I tell my brain this is not the time. I'll go back to it when I just have 10 minutes left and I can go back to it after that. And that way I'm not giving my brain the dopamine hit that they get when you actually look at your notifications.
Yes, I love it. I'm gonna have to implement that. That's amazing. Yeah, you're totally right because we're bombarded with constant emails and phone calls and text messages the entire day. And I feel like I'm always like reaching for this and reaching for that and need to respond fast, fast, fast. But no, you're totally right. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love it. So, Veena, how do you reinvest in yourself to keep up to date with your market or niche?
Sure. Yeah, I have made a reading list because my industry niche is in virtual reality, augmented reality, and digital health and healthcare. So I use a couple of apps where I can get feeds from a lot of other, like Feedly is one that I use a lot, and FeedMesh. So you can go to these websites, any magazines that you're really interested in, and aggregate all of that into one app. And so that way I'm able to keep track of everything new that is coming out in my industry in one application. And I kind of spend certain amount of time, like half an hour to 1 hour in a day, just going through all the new updates. And obviously subscriptions to many other resources that, once you start finding something, you'll be like, this is a good resource, and they cover the technology and stories that I need to keep up with. And I subscribe to them. And try to take out a lot of the noise because there's so much that you get bombarded with. At one point I used to read about random things which are it's still interesting, but I'm like, I'm wasting my time. So when I have to read something, I do a quick check in my head. Is this something that will help with my career, or is this something that I'm just distracting myself with? Then I'll be able to focus my time and also keep up with the industry.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that we never stop learning. Just because we opened a business, that does not stop there. It's a constant growth, it's a constant evolution process. So it's good to hear the different ways that people are learning about their industries and to keeping up to date with what's going on. So I
Mhm.
love it.
Before 2020, I was actually able to keep up with my reading challenge. If you've heard about it, like 19 books in 2019, 20 books in 2020. Somehow last year is where I actually lost
Uh
track.
oh.
I did keep up on 2017, 18, and 19. I was actually kept up with the number of books that you had to read per year.
90 books
Uh,
a year. Is that what you said?
no, so 2019, it's 19 books.
19 books. Okay.
Yeah, that 90 is crazy.
Yeah. No, way to go. Hey,
Yeah.
19 books is
So
great too.
mhm. And the thing about books too, right? It's like another mentor for you. If you want to learn about the subject, you can just read a book about somebody who's, their whole life experience is inside that book. And it's a fast way to learn too. And I think I've learned a lot from how to create a business. And I used to read them before even I started the business. So I felt like I had a little bit of a base when I did start my because I used to read a lot of startup books
Mhm.
when I was just working in the corporate world. But in the end, I don't think you learn any. I think the best way to learn is actually create and be in the business and work on it.
Yes, I'm like raising my hands over here. I wish you could see me. Yes to everything. Reading books and staying up to date, absolutely, absolutely powerful. So, thank you so much for sharing that. I love it. Vina, what does the American dream mean to you?
Yeah. So when I did come to the US, in the beginning, I thought, I'm going to study, I'm going to get a job, do the normal American thing, have a good paying job, travel and things like that. But as I was reading about startups, everything that's happening in the US and all the technology you get when it comes to virtual reality, you can get your hands on the newest stuff when you're in the US versus when you're in India. So my ambitions just kept getting bigger and bigger. 1 year in, I think I kind of knew that I wanted to start a company. And then I was like, I'm going to try my best. No, you don't really have to go do the legal things. You can start creating prototypes to see if people like what you're creating. So that's kind of where I started. And then having mentors around you and trying to find, other people that you admire, because I'm still a big fan of Elon Musk, and he's done so much. He's from South Africa and he's an immigrant
Yeah.
when you think about it. And
Yeah.
so is Sundar Pichai, who is Google's CEO right now. And he's from a small, when I think about it, I'm actually from a city in India, which is, well-known city, is the IT capital of India. But Sundar Pichai is actually from a small rural place in
Yeah.
Chennai. Like when you see that and see what he's done, he's the CEO of one of the Fortune, FANG companies here. When you see these people do these, like maybe I can do more, then
Hmm.
so my ambitions just kept getting bigger and bigger, and I knew I was going to I want to start a company, see where I can go from there. And the sky is the limit, like you said. In the US, if you I one thing that you do realize, I'm sure, is if you have skills and you work hard, there are opportunities, even though it might be skewed a bit when it comes to immigrants and women. But there are people that will help you out, and you just have to find them.
So, can anyone reach their American dream?
Yes.
I love it. Yes, it's so amazing to hear everyone's ambitions and everyone's dreams come true here in America. And this is exactly the show to share all of the journeys and how everyone gets there. So, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, is giving back, either volunteering your time or giving back to the community, something that is part of your business values?
Definitely. Even when I was in school, I used to do a lot of volunteering. And now I wish I could do more than I am. When you're running this business, you do not have time. But I have a lot of immigrant, especially women, who reach out to me who are still in school asking about my journey. And I always try to take the time to talk to them and talk to them about their dreams, what they want to do, and try to give as many tips as I can. So that's kind of usually what I do. So as we grow, we want to be able to do more volunteering work, be able to help patients in rural areas has been one of my goals that I would try to accomplish with this company, because physical therapy is expensive and hard. Clinics are far and apart, so it's hard to get to, and it's even more harder when you're in rural area, probably not do not have as good healthcare as probably when you're in a city. So with technology, I want to be able to democratize and being able to bring access to care and therapy for anybody who needs it wherever they are. It doesn't matter what socioeconomic status they're in.
I love it. What are some things you would advise the next aspiring immigrant that wants to start their own business?
Yeah. So I think as immigrants, we have sometimes come with set rules as to what we're going to do. And we try to just follow that path, and just saying it's okay to go off the beaten path. It is scary because sometimes you don't find anybody to compare, not taking the same path as you, and you'll probably feel alone, but it's all right. We have one life, so try things out. And if you want to start a business, just go for it. In What matters in the end is your product, and if there's a market for your product and everybody want to use your product. So don't worry about, in the beginning at least, the legal parts about, when somebody thinks about creating a company, they think about the name of the company, going and forming the company and things like that. But I think you have to start off with creating a product first and seeing how much people like it and if there's traction, and then you can figure out the rest. And don't let the inhibitions that you have about being an immigrant or being a woman or not from this country. But in the beginning, you don't feel like you deserve it. You don't feel entitled to things because you're not from here. And that's
Hmm.
something that I had to struggle with too. And then I had to realize I deserve this. I am entitled to be like somebody who's creating CEO of a startup. I didn't call myself the CEO for the longest time. I didn't call myself an entrepreneur for the longest time, and maybe like 2 or 3 years into the company.
Wow. And I love what you said. We have one life, so try it out. What a way to end the show. Veena, thank you so, so much for coming on the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast. I love your journey, everything about it. What a unique journey. Thank you so much for being in the healthcare world and producing something that is extremely positive to your clients. So thank you so much. I appreciate and I'm honored to share your story. So thank you again.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing the podcast with you.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If there are any links that were mentioned in this episode, make sure to check them out on my website under this episode to find all the links conveniently located in the show notes. I just wanted to ask for a quick favor if you could please leave a review wherever you're at listening to this podcast. Also, if you're an immigrant entrepreneur and would love to be on my podcast, please email me and we'll get connected. I'll see you guys all next time for another exciting and impactful episode. Take care.